guys, welcome to Literary Tea. I'm Anna.
I'm Georgie, and we'll be your host in this podcast, in which we talk about literature together with other themes.
And today's episode is called How is Moral Duality Represented in Literature Through Centuries? So, Georgie, thinking about moral duality, instantly we think about good versus evil, good versus bad. And what do you think about this duality?
Well, when you talk about duality, as you mentioned, yeah, good and bad, we also tend to go to dualities like God and demon, light and dark, correct, incorrect, and I've been noticing this with my cousin that she is around 4, 5 years old. And she's a kid, she is starting to have her identity and, shaped. And last week I saw her, beating her cat. And every time we tell her that she cannot do it, she says something like, why? So it is when her mother or her grandmother tries to explain to her that it is not something good because the cat feels pain when she does it and so on. So by this example, I can think that when we talk about dualities in human life as a whole, we don't have it well defined when we are born, for example, or when we are a little kid, like a very little kid.
You mean that it's not something that we are born with. We are taught what is good or what is allowed and what is bad or forbidden, right?
Yes, and we don't even stop to think about it. But if you pay attention, like if you are at a bus stop, for example, and you see a mother or a father with their kids, or with one kid, for example, the kid is constantly, for example, trying to play around over there, messing around with people,
Yes.
or trying to go to the street, and the mother or the father is always, no, you can't do it. It's dangerous.
Or it's a misbehave.
Yeah, you're not behaving correctly or accordingly. So all of this that we basically don't notice this, but it is a way to teach, to teach us that we are taught what is good and what is bad.
Like your cousin, as your grandmother or your aunt says, you can't beat the cat, you can't hit the cat because,
Yeah.
right? Because she asks why every time. And I think when a kid asks why is exactly, it proves exactly this argument that we are not born with it, this notion. So we can say that this notion is basically human.
Yeah, we can. I think so. Uh, you mean the how this duality is built?
Yes, they are built by human.
Yeah, of course, because if you pay attention, I think that, and not only I think, but I'm trying to base myself here on some readings on psychoanalysis, for example.
Yes.
Uh, we are much more inclined to what we consider bad attitudes or what we consider misbehaviors than to good attitudes.
Something like the bad side is our root nature,
Yeah,
right?
in this sense.
And since we are defending here that these values, I can say like that, right?
Yeah.
These values, they are taught. They are taught by who? What do you think?
First of all, family. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the first group, social group or social environment that we get in touch, considering since we are born. Family is really the first, but what else?
Well, I'd say religion too. In some cases, not all cases.
Yeah.
But in some cases, religion plays a very, definite moral role in kids' lives. Not only kids' lives, but it goes on when you
Yeah.
grow up.
And I think in our case here in Brazil, since Christianism is the majority, embraces the majority of the population in
Mm-hmm.
Brazil, we can say about things about church, exactly about church.
Yeah.
We do have other religions here, but we're talking about the major one. So,
And I'd say also up to the point, the influence of religion is so, I'd say, so, present here in Brazil, that up to the point that what one group considers to be, bad or against morality, for example, like, let me put it, um, same-sex marriage.
okay.
You know, it hasn't been a long time since it is like approved by law here in Brazil.
Yes, it's very recent.
Yeah, because we have very traditional, conservative, religious morals that hinders these kinds of actions.
And in our case here, sometimes we it's almost like a fusion.
Yeah,
We what we consider moral, according to the law, sometimes is the same considering the Christianism.
yeah, and we end up applying it or forcing it into other people, which
Yes,
are not Christian, for example.
yes, exactly. So it's something like the religion is blended, or it's a fusion with the law
Yeah,
itself.
apart from religion and family, what else would you put
I think
as?
school would be other other column of this trinity, this trinity of teaching. And in this case, the school, I think religion, it's very directed to moral.
Yeah.
And school, I think it's more directed to notions of civilization,
Mm-hmm.
like respect someone's personal space, respect someone's choices, learn to live within a community, listening to the others and working with others. When teachers, for example, ask students, grown up children, like not so young, not so old as teenagers, but when they ask them to work in groups, basically they're watching you. How do you behave in a group?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a role play of what society is.
Yeah.
Because we we have to live in a society.
Mm-hmm.
We do have this condition of living among other people and living among with different kinds of thoughts, and we have some rules to live in this community.
So, to sum up the school thing, it would be more related to ethics, yeah,
Yes,
than to
I
morals.
do think.
Mm-hmm.
And um, thinking about this trinity and the kind of dualities that they teach us, like what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. Um, what do you think? I don't know how exactly to ask you that, but what do you think about what keeps us from like not doing what is wrong?
Well, I'd say that it's interesting to ask this because I was going to mention religion, but I was trying to think of something more, that would embrace a great reality than not only religion, because not everyone has a religion or so on. But if you think about parents educating a child, when a child does something wrong, he or she is uh, reprehended, or yeah, or in some cases beat, and
Yes.
there is a punishment, yeah, for that misbehavior, that misdeed. So I think that we take it for life. So we're always avoiding to do bad things or things that are considered morally or ethically bad because we know that there will be a punishment. We grow up with this idea, even if it was put in our minds, from the behavior of our parents or in a, in a more institutionalized thing by religion. Yeah, God will punish you if you do this.
Yes. Yeah, in the case of religion,
And even the law. Yeah.
yeah, even the law, but in the religion, I think the what we call like the evil would be the sin.
Yeah.
So it's like the sin is that Im- imaginary speaking, that monster that you avoid.
Yeah. And it would be, you know, humanly speaking, that would be very difficult to avoid uh, sin. Yeah, because, you know, at least for Christianity, we sin even by thinking. Only even our thoughts, we are committing sin. So that would be almost humanly impossible. I think that some of us, some people, society in general, are so. I think that many people, speaking in general, they are neurotic because we have our desires and likes so much suppressed, by this idea of sin.
Reprehended.
Yeah, that in some cases, to some people, it has uh, they carry on they carry much more responsibility to themselves than they can, in fact. So it can be taken to a more serious step in life. Some people will avoid committing bad acts or bad attitudes because of their own conscience or because they think they will be punished by God or by law. And some people will not care about this, I think, simply. Just that.
Yeah, I think that too.
Yeah, let me put it like that. Especially if, let's take someone who has been stealing for more than 5 years,
Yeah.
for example.
Uh-huh.
Let's put it like that. This person is used to it already. He's already used to do this. So I think that there comes a point in which this person doesn't care about law,
Yeah.
whichever law it is. If it is their own law, their own conscience, their own voice,
Or their own sense of justice,
yeah,
or their own sense of justice, right?
yeah.
We've been talking about this notion of good and evil in someone's action and in someone's mind. But how is it reflected or represented in literature? I think we can, if we get some examples, I think it's good if we go back to the ancient Greek. It's another reality, very old, more than almost 2000 years or more,
Yep.
and we do have some conflicts. I think that we have to remember that since we have notions of society, and notions of society, I mean order, some organization, and some rules, we will have some conflicts, and we can prove that if we get some examples through time. What example do you think that is good to really talks about these dualities since the Greek, for example?
Okay. I think that the Greek, culture and literature is very rich in tragedies And tragedies in general, they deal with a conflict, a main conflict. So let's take Oedipus, yeah, by Sophocles. Uh, in there, Oedipus kills his father without knowing that he's killing his father. He just meets him on the road one day, and he kills him because he's under stress in that day, and uh,
They got in a
they
fight
got in a
about
fight.
a silly thing,
Yeah,
right?
something very silly, and he just kills him without thinking much about killing a man, the consequence after it. So he just kills it in that moment.
Yes.
Yeah, and there comes a moment in the play that he knows that someone tells him that he killed his father, and without knowing it, also he married his mother and had a child. Had children
Yes.
with his own mother. But if we think like that, was was he right or wrong? Was it bad or good what he did? It's complicated to put it so black and white like
Yes.
that because he didn't know he was killing his father.
And also it's important to mention that this play is about a prophecy that in the beginning of the play an oracle tells Oedipus' father that all of this is going to happen. You're going to have a child, he's going to kill you, and he's going to marry your wife and have children. So Oedipus' father is so afraid of this prophecy that he sends away his only son, Oedipus, and thinking that sending his child away would avoid this prophecy. But in the future, everything happens according to the
Yeah.
prophecy. So the big discussion in this play is until which point your life is guided by destiny
Yeah.
or by your actions. This is the main point. But here we want to focus on exactly on Oedipus. During the whole play, he does these actions without knowing the reasons. He just does it. He kills his father. He marry a woman. He doesn't even know that the woman he married was the man he it was the wife of the man he killed. He didn't even know that. And when I think 4 years later, I think that he kills his father. So his children with his mother are grown up, a little grown up. Everything is okay in his life. Everything is settled. His mother, that is his wife, loves him. So everything is okay. And something happened, and he knows what really happened. And he gets in so much conflict about the this horrid situation that he kills himself because he couldn't take it. So until which point he is really a victim of the prophecy. We are saying prophecy here because it's what it is,
Yep.
or he did it because he wanted to, because something bad came into him and conducted him to act like this. So it's very complicated.
Yeah, I think that, as you mentioned, that's the difficulty of the Greek tragedies in this sense, because you can never say, or you can almost never say that, okay, it is all, everything is his fault, Oedipus' fault. Because as you mentioned, okay, there was an oracle that, put this sort of destiny ahead of him, and there is also his own character,
Yeah.
in the sense that he he doesn't, for example, he doesn't think about the fact of killing a man, for example. He just kills him.
Yeah.
Why? Just because he was nervous, he was angry at the time, but he doesn't think. Yeah, so he has this very, let's say, strong character. But as we are mentioning, as we are discussing good and evil, good and bad, we can see this example of how it works in his own mind. The moment he's told that married his mother, yeah, without knowing, and he killed his father. What does he do? He, uh,
Makes a self-punishment.
yeah, he inflicts upon himself the punishment of getting blind. So
So he stabs his own eye.
yeah, he stabs his own eyes. He punishes himself after he comes to know everything that he had done in the past. So in this moment, we can we can see his own conscience playing with him in the sense of
Yes.
the morals, yeah.
If we want to say that the conscience sometimes is God, sometimes is your family, sometimes is the religion, in this situation, the the figure that represents the moral is your own conscience.
Yeah, he can't stand the fact that it was him who killed his father and then
Married
married his
his
mother.
mother. Yeah. So if we go on our timeline, we can go to the 16th century, in which we have some Shakespearean works. One of them, I think, that is really a representation of this conflict is Hamlet. And what do you think it's that Hamlet's biggest conflict that he has?
You know, in this sense, I think it is easier to point this out because if you compare to Oedipus, for example, because in Shakespearean tragedy, we don't have this destiny thing, these characters that are somehow guided by by the God's will. It doesn't
Yeah,
happen in Shakespeare. In Shakespeare, we have this idea of the modern hero of the tragedy is that he is
by
completely
himself.
responsible for himself. So Hamlet, in a sense, uh, is in conflict with himself because his father uh, appears to him after he was killed by his own brother. So the ghost of Hamlet's father appears to him and asks him avenge his death.
Make justice
Yeah,
of what happened.
and Hamlet, stays the whole play trying to make this decision
Is he going to kill his uncle or
or
not,
not.
right?
So he doesn't know if he is angry uh, uh, at the fact that his own uncle killed his father. Yes, he is, but he is in so much doubt if he is going to kill him or not that the whole play uh, is almost sometimes all about delaying the fact that he has to kill his uncle and he doesn't know how to do it, or if he has really to do it.
What are the arguments of Hamlet when he thinks like, okay, when he thinks about I have to kill my uncle, it's kind of obvious that his kind of thinking is supported by the argument that he killed my father, so I want to kill my uncle. Okay, but what are the arguments that comes into his mind when he thinks about I'm not going to kill him?
Uh, Actually, I don't recall exactly if he really says that he's not going to kill it. We imply it from his delay in the action because um, he's constantly thinking. He thinks so much in a situation in which he shouldn't think. Because Hamlet is a man of philosophy with uh, thinking, yeah, and in this sense, he would need to have action. He would need to act.
So
So
it's very the opposite of
yeah,
Oedipus.
completely opposite. He's completely the opposite, and he is in a place. He's surrounded by people is so who is so absorbed, who are so absorbed in this palace context of intrigue, of fights, of taking power over someone else, and it is not his place. So he's completely confused all the time because he isn't in his place, in the place he would like to be.
It's really like a representation of a time that you are really considering other things, humanly speaking,
Yeah, he's a humanist in this
and
sense.
Yeah, and not letting your wild side speak too loud, right?
Exactly. So he's just grieving his father's death, and out of the blue, his father comes up to him and say, "Okay, you have to avenge me," and he doesn't know what to do. So we imply that he doesn't know if he really wants to kill Claudius, his uncle, or not, because he delays this decision on planning and planning and planning, but it takes so long for him to finally do it.
Something that we would imagine that it would come instinctively.
Yeah,
You killed my father, so this moves me so much that my action, almost like a natural effect, is I'm going to kill you. And in this case, in this play, that is completely deconstructed.
yeah, and the decision relies on him, only on him.
Yeah, this is a very different context from the previous work.
Yeah, but considering this timeline that we've been building, uh, what other work or author would you put ahead of Shakespearean tragedy?
Well, I think that some works from the Romantic period, the English Romantic period, can dialogue with us a little bit about this theme. And one of the works that I thought was the Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Coleridge. It's a work from the 18th century, the very end of the
Mm-hmm.
18th century. And the story is very interesting. We have a mariner that in the beginning of the story, we, of course, here we have a different genre. We have a poem, a narrative poem. The other two works that we just discussed, they are plays.
Yep.
So here we have a different format, a narrative poem with all of its characteristics. But what happens is, in the beginning of the story, we have a mariner wandering in a town, and he starts talking to a young man about what happened in his life. And he tells that once he went into a trip on a ship with the crew, and they were going to some lands very far. And one day he saw an albatross flying over the ship for like 3 days. And like in the third day or in the fourth day, I don't recall, he decided to kill this albatross. And the crew, all of the crew was very angry with him because it's like, you did an act of violence without a purpose. So from that point, it's we have a beginning of a series of punishments with this mariner in the story. Some human, some not natural, not human. So the human part of the punishment is the crew puts the albatross around the mariner's neck like a cross, reminding us the image of Jesus carrying
Mm-hmm.
a cross. And after that, the nature as a divination, as a divination, starts punishing the mariner. So some storms start happening, and the crew suddenly is dead, and then they rise up as zombies and starts hunting the mariner. The death itself comes personified as a woman into the ship and wants to carry the souls of the crew. So it's very scary. And the tale, after all that, the mariner asks for forgiveness because of this, because of killing an animal of God in this sense.
Uh-huh.
And God or the nature or whatever divinity you want to say forgives him, but they leave the mariner with a condition. The mariner has to, wherever he goes, tells his story to the people, so the people won't act like him, in the sense that making violent actions with no reason. Not exactly killing an albatross, but not being violent because you can be punished. So it's basically a tale. It's a horror tale. It's very impressive for the time. But we also have this kind of analysis of punishment and forgiveness that is very present in the work.
And what really calls my attention in this work, in this sense, is that we have, as you said, the mariner kills the albatross for apparent no reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
he hasn't got like a just reason to do that. He
Yes.
just does it, and he is punished for being himself, in the sense that for obeying his instinct.
Yes.
That's the idea, um, that we see, for example, in psychoanalysis, that we have this inclination to bad,
The
to evil.
perversion.
Yeah, he just obeyed his instinct of killing a bird, even if it's for no reason at all. It's just instinctive.
Yeah.
But society, religion, law needs to put on us a way for us to adapt and live within society. I cannot go killing people just for killing people, or animals, or anything else.
There is going to be consequences and punishment
Yeah,
for this. So
for this.
don't just start doing it, because you won't be free for doing it.
Yeah, and we see this desire of letting go, if I can put it like that, uh, in the following century, the 19th century, for example, in the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, for example, that novella by Robert Louis Stevenson. We have Dr. Jekyll, which is a doctor from the upper class. So we see that is someone who, in the Victorian context, someone from the upper classes needed to be very earnest. Yeah.
Yes.
So especially a doctor.
It's basically it becomes your basis.
Yeah.
Of character. You have to be earnest. It's part of you.
Yeah, Dr. Jekyll as a doctor holds a very important social title, and from this only from this idea of him being a doctor and from the upper class, we know that he has to be someone very earnest and someone very, strictly related to ethics and moral also, and morals as well. But
And he has to behave in a way like you cannot say what you're thinking.
exactly.
You cannot give your real opinion.
And for that reason, he creates a sort of elixir, and by that, he turns into Hyde, Mr. Hyde, which is an alter ego of himself.
Yeah, in the book, it is really represented. The change is really represented by the physical appearance. So, Dr. Jekyll, we have that old man in a suit, in a respectful aura.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Hyde, we have that monstrous aspect of someone with like with a hunchback.
He's repulsive, yeah.
Yeah, it's a repulsive figure. So we not only we have the notion of good and bad in the behavior, but in the appearance also. So we can distinct in our minds.
Yeah, in this personification, yeah, of Dr. Jekyll, the good, and Mr. Hyde, his bad side, or his evil side, we can, make this reading of how much Dr. Jekyll is, repressed in his instincts, as all humans are, that when he lets it go, in the person of Mr. Hyde, he kills people, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially what is very interesting about the story is that whatever he does as Mr. Hyde, when he is Dr. Jekyll back again, he doesn't remember anything at all. What he did as Mr. Hyde. So it's really that convenient situation that you don't even have the chance of using your self-conscious in this moment because you don't remember.
I
How can
think,
I blame myself if I don't even remember what I did when I was using my alter ego cape?
now that you mentioned this, the fact that he doesn't remember, I just made me relate to, for example, there are some people that drink a lot to the point that not remembering of what they done like the last night, the night before, in the following day. Let's put it in a way of
Yeah.
escape the person itself. So I think that this work by Stevenson is so human in this sense, because somehow for me it represents us all. We are all repressed by morality or by society, by law in some way, and Dr. Jekyll had to turn create an alter ego, let go an alter ego
So he
to
wouldn't
free
blame him.
himself in this sense.
Yeah, yeah, even in the sense that he wouldn't blame himself
Yeah,
because Mr. Hyde, in his perspective, is a different person, but in reality, it's himself.
which is curious, the name Hyde, yeah, because it is this
Yeah,
bad side of him,
that
which
it.
is also part of him, but is hidden inside him, hidden within himself.
Yes, if we keep on in the 19th century, we can also mention a work, a Russian, very famous Russian work from Dostoevsky, which is Crime and Punishment. Uh, this story is very peculiar if we think about the time. It was still a time of many kingdoms in the world. And what we have here, we have a context of a Russia very with distinctive social classes. The rich are very rich, the poor are very poor, and um, we have a guy, Raskolnikov. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Raskolnikov, he's a man, a poor guy, and he is really struggling with money to finish his law college. And he is away from his family. He has a mother and a sister. They are in a small town, in a village, I don't recall. And in one point, he sees himself struggling with the with college, with money, with food, with surviving itself. And he doesn't tell anyone. Only himself knows about these things that he's suffering. Not even his mother knows about these. And one day he gets in touch with an old lady from another building, another apartment. He gets in touch with her. He doesn't even have a relationship with her. She's not his friend or anything like that, but he knows her. And one day when he's very involved with these conflicts of surviving and this pressure of society that you're not being you're not going to be anyone in your life and so on, he something comes in his nature. He decides to kill this old lady with a wax. So he goes to her apartment. She opens the door to him. She thinks that he's there for any other reasons, and then he kills her. He hits her with the wax many times, and then he goes away. No one sees him. So the entire book, this is in the beginning of the story, the whole book is two contexts. He dealing with the guilt, not only the guilt of killing someone, but of escaping from the police and the justice itself.
Because he's hiding out all the time.
Not he's hiding, he is living among people, but
Right.
no one saw.
Knows him.
Yeah, no one knows him. No one saw what he was doing because it was like in the very late in the night,
Right.
so no one saw him. The whole book is he trying to avoid the punishment, but if we really get into this character's mind, we can think and discuss things like until which point he was the guilt he was guilty, or he was just a victim of a destroyed society like was Russia at that time, with many people starving in the streets and so on. So it's a book that makes you think, and I think it's a good example here, as we are talking about characters that have conflicts, inner conflicts, especially.
And you see that, okay, these conflicts, they are from within. They are inner conflicts, but they are, in this case, if I may say it like that, they are triggered by a social context.
Yes.
Yeah, by social conditions. Not only, but the social context plays an important role in a sense.
Yeah, they don't act badly out of the blue. They have a reason. The reason is questionable. Some of them can be, some not.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll ever, have a definite answer for that.
No, not at all.
So we've been talking about these characters in literature that were represented, in different centuries. So we talked about Oedipus, then Hamlet, then the Ancient Mariner, and so on. Okay, we can notice that, especially from, let's put it like that, the 18th century onwards, we have, in a much more highlighted way, this disintegration of the self. Yeah,
Yes.
in the sense that we saw, for example, in Jekyll and Hyde. But how do you see this aspect, this issue in the 19th, in the 21st century, and even in the 20th? But I'd say that I see that this issue in the 20th century, it is somehow an extension of what is represented in the end of the 19th century, as in Jekyll and Hyde, or in Oscar Wilde and Dorian Gray, that we didn't mention here, but also has almost the same theme. But I think that especially nowadays in the 21st century, how do you see this?
Well, something that is very presented in pop culture is that the notion of good and bad are always represented in two different characters. So normally, if we consider, for example, heroes, superheroes, we would have characters that are the representation of good. So they don't even make mistakes at all. We trust them. We want to be like them. They are
Models,
they are
almost like
models that we want to follow, or that they inspire us. I don't know. And the villain is really the villain. They are evil. They are so evil that they don't need actually a reason to be a villain. They are bad because they are bad. It's basically, the duality is basically about the nature of the person or of the character.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have some characters from the 20th century onwards because pop culture is very hyped nowadays. So a good example for me would be the Joker and Batman. Joker, as we know, he is basically the villain. Batman is the hero. But if we study deeply both characters, we can see some things that are questionable in Batman and some things that make sense on the Joker. And that makes, I think, this couple so special in this sense of differentiating. For example, Batman, he assumes himself he's not a superhero of supernatural powers. He's just a rich guy that has rich tools, and he decides by traumas, by any reason that he has, to defend the people from crimes. So he likes to make justice with his own hands. That means that he doesn't trust the police. He doesn't trust that much the juridical system,
The law system
the
in
law
general, yeah.
system. He doesn't trust it entirely. He sees corruption everywhere, and he is very human. He has flaws. And the joke, so he's not actually a model, like superhero. If we like Batman, we know that he's not a model of perfection. And considering the Joker, he's a madman that destroys everything, but his reasons, they're not crazy.
Yeah, he's gone through a lot, right? As far as I can remember from the plot of his story. Yeah.
Yeah, he's basically an anarchist, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't believe in system, and he's not entirely wrong. What is wrong are his actions with his ideologies, but his ideologies are not completely evil, like black and white, as we are saying. That doesn't work here. He's not evil just because he wanna be. He has reasons that we believe in them, and it's very strange. Sometimes the Joker is more popular than Batman, and Batman is the superhero. Should be the opposite, but sometimes we idolize, we adore the villain. That in this case is the Joker.
I felt the same way when I watched the film, The Joker. I think it was last year.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched it, and uh, I felt really sympathetic for him. Yeah, because of his story. And even though, as you mentioned, sometimes his actions, are not good, yeah, but the motives, yeah, the reasons why makes us start thinking about uh, other people that, in real life could do the same thing as he does. Yeah, because the system is also cruel to them.
We kind of start understanding his reasons.
Yeah.
Another example that I think it's very clear and very recent, also about superhero context, is the Black Panther, the movie. I'm not a comic fan, but I watched Black Panther, and something called my attention. That is, we have the hero, that is T'Challa, and we have the villain, that is Ninjadaka. I don't remember if I'm pronouncing their names correctly, but T'Challa, he lives in Wakanda, a hidden city, and in this city everything is okay. We don't have conflict, and this city is hidden. You can only enter it if they allow you. And we have his cousin, which is Nijadaka, and he lives in the United States. He starts feeling very angry because of some situations that he passes through, and he wants to go to Wakanda to, I think, to get some. I don't remember if it's to get the place of T'Challa because T'Challa is the prince, or because he wants an army. I don't know, but his plan doesn't have to do with Wakanda. His plan is to make justice with racism crimes, and T'Challa wants to avoid it because he's against violence. And one of the arguments that Njadaka has is, T'Challa, you don't live in the context that I live, so you don't know how it feels when we pass through these situations. You should be on my side because you are as me. You would suffer the same prejudice as I am suffering. But T'Challa is against violence at all, and they start fighting in the movie. But what is interesting here is that the villain is not only bad. His reasons are legitimate. You believe that. It makes sense. It's basically his reasons are, I'm fighting against racism.
Which is something that he needs to speak against it because he's been suffering from it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost the same case of the Joker. Yeah, not in the sense of race, but social issues.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So they are very interesting. For me at least, it's interesting because I've grown up with the sense of superheroes being the model of perfection
yeah,
and the model of moralism and so on. They don't make mistakes at all, and the villain is the one that is wrong all the time. And these movies, they are showing us that not everything is what it seems to be.
yeah. This duality of superhero and villain is so extreme that they don't seem human in a sense. Yeah, because we only see the good in one side and the bad in another side. Uh, if we can take another example, I'd mention Professor Severus Snape from the Harry Potter series because he's very curious in this sense. Since we can see this blended bad and evil and good side in him. He when he was younger, he used to love Lily Potter, who is Harry Potter mother, and Harry Potter father, James. He used to mock him. So Snape was was bullied a lot in his school time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, we are presented to Snape, which is a professor in the School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and he is very stern looking and very strict to rules and discipline, and he doesn't get along with Harry Potter because he's the son of the man who used to bully him,
Yes.
but he also stands for Harry Potter, protecting him somehow because because of the love he used to nourish for his mother. So we have this character that is very complicated in this sense because we are presented to a character as Snape who seems or who looks evil and bad throughout the series and the books and the films. And when we are reaching the end, like I'd say from the fifth, sixth book on, we are presented with his story, his background. And we know that even he being a Death Eater, which was a group allied to Lord Voldemort, the main antagonist, uh, even he being a Death Eater, he tried to protect Harry Potter from Voldemort. Not exactly because of Harry, but because of the sort of connection and link that he had to his mother.
And I think Snape is a good example of perspective. because we read the whole saga in Harry Potter or his friends' perspective of
Yes.
him. So what do we see of Snape is what Harry Potter and Hermione and
Ron.
and Ron says of him.
Yeah. So uh, that's why I think that's what I think interesting about him, because we see someone that, even though now at that moment in the story looks very rigid and stern, he has some reasons for that. The same way as in the Black Panther, the protagonist fights against racism because he suffers from it, and so on.
And Batman and the Joker
Yeah,
and so on.
they are very human for this because they really represent good and evil together. They
Yeah.
are conflicting points and sides, but they cannot exist without the other.
So do you think that we saw like many centuries, different characters, different stories, and how each of them has a conflict, inner conflict, related to morality. Do you think that it's still a tendency from today on that we still have characters that have this duality within them, or this is going to be a subject that is going to end because we are overexposed to them since the Greek?
I think that it is something that, since it has been emerging from some time now, I think it will go on. This tendency of showing the villain in his human side. Because as a human, a complete human, not only as an evil guy or a bad guy, we label them as bad and evil. Yeah, but I think that this tendency of showing the perspective of his growing up, of his infancy, childhood, how he was treated when he was younger, and how he is nowadays. I think this is going to be a tendency still.
Well, guys, this was our third episode called How is Moral Duality Represented in Literature Through Centuries? We hope you like it.
And if you liked it, please share with your friends and don't forget to follow us on Instagram at lit.podcast.
And leave a comment on our post about this episode.
See you on our next episode of Literary Tea Podcast.